I'm not thinking about anything when I'm climbing, which is part of the appeal. I'm focused on executing what's in front of me. Alex Holland, free solo. Climbing is a sport with rising popularity, one that involves a lot of learning and patience within yourself. As simple as the idea of going up is, there is a lot that comes first. I personally have been climbing indoors and outdoors for 4+ years, so I have a bit to teach for anyone who wants to start out as a beginning climber. You'll need to learn all the basics, of course, and understand how good climbing is for you. And finally, how climbing can impact the fragile thing that we call Earth. Time to really dive in and learn what is needed to start climbing. So, let's climb on.
So let's get into looking at some of the grips. First off, we have our pocket. Our pocket is going to have just a few fingers in there, usually 1, 2, or 3, while the other 2 go ahead and wrap around nice. It's a bit of a difficult hold for new ones, so don't worry about it. Our jug is where we're going to put our fingers in. It's a really nice grip with a lot of room for you to really hold on. You're going to see that on a lot of beginning routes. A jug is your best friend, trust me. We have our pinch and our grip. Our pinch is going to be one-handed or two-handed, usually a wide, very strong middle hand grip, while our crimp is going to be mostly the tops of your fingers while the rest of your hand wraps around. Pinch is two-handed or one big hand, while your crimp is just your fingertips. So these are the main ones. We have other holds that you could see, but these are the main ones that really matter, trust me. Next up is our foothold. So this is the first one that I usually like to tell people. It is called smearing. Smearing is where you put your foot on the wall and essentially just use the wall to put your weight on it. You use the tips of your toes and you can put any amount of weight on it as you want. Next up is probably one of my favorite things to do while climbing. It's called flagging, where you go ahead and you take your opposite leg and dip it down, making it look like a flag. It disperses your body weight and actually makes it so you can take some of the intense pressure that could be on any of your hand joints, and you can just kind of hang there. It's a really fun time. Obviously, my fingers felt amazing at this point. Next up is handholds. We're going to go ahead and do something called matching, where you go ahead and bring both your hands together, and this makes it so you can put your hands together in order to move up. The final thing I'm going to show is a heel hook. A heel hook is something that you can use to simply hook your heel and take some weight off. It's a good time. So when it comes to equipment, there are usually 3 big things that you need for equipment for just general everyday kind of climbing. Whether it be boulder, speed, or lead climbing, these are the kind of equipment that you're going to generally be using. First off, we have our shoes. Our shoes are going to be about the same size as your regular shoes. Depending on what they feel like for your feet, you may need to size up or size down. When you are wearing shoes, you should be able to feel a pinching on it. Nothing too severe, but a slight pinch means that the shoes fit properly and will make it so you can perform any type of maneuver on the rock well. Depending on what kind of climbing you're doing, you may have different shoes. This one is generally used for bouldering or newer kinds of climbers. This is my favorite pair. Next up, we're going to need chalk. While chalk isn't something that is necessarily used in climbing, it does help a lot. Chalk usually is held in a climbing bag inside of a chalk sock, and it comes in many different types. I prefer to use fine inside my chalk sock because it makes it the easiest to disperse on my fingers. And finally, the last thing that you're going to need is a harness. Now, you don't necessarily need to be wearing this constantly when you're climbing, but it does help, especially if you have a carabiner to go ahead and clip your chalk bag onto, so you can easily grab chalk. Again, harnesses are used generally for lead or speed climbing, but you can actually use them for bouldering if you want to have your chalk nearby. That's all of our climbing gear, so let's climb on. Now, after we've put some chalk on our hands, tied our shoes on, don't need a harness because we're just bouldering, we're going to approach the problem, look at it, visualize it, see, we got this, point at it, put both hands on the start, one foot up, the other foot up, now you've started. Give it a little flag to get you some momentum. Do a little swing, bring your hands up, move your feet up, nice little heel hook to bring some weight off your fingers. Match your hands, shift your feet over, one hand on the finish, other hand on the finish, and you're done. From taking on so much information on how to begin, let's look at how healthy climbing is for you. Some health benefits of climbing include strengthening your muscles. These muscle groups being your upper body and your back, your core, your grip strength in your fingers, and your forearms. You'd be surprised after how strong you can get after 2 months of climbing. Climbing also helps with problem solving. There's always unlimited challenges to go through. There's a huge satisfaction of solving, and climbing really does keep your brain sharp. It keeps you prepared and alert for whatever is coming at you. Finally, according to the NHS of Scotland, climbing involves concentration and thought, as well as physical exercise, which helps keep you focused, clears your mind of outside worries, and also helps to build your confidence and self esteem, alleviating some symptoms of mental health problems. Meaning that climbing is good for your mental health, it's good for your brain, it's good for you to go outside. According to Langston and Silverson, researchers who studied why climbers enjoy risk versus recognition, the risk must be relevant, which means it must be a form of risk that can be managed, which is huge for people that have anxiety, including myself. I have that management whenever you can go out climbing, where you can choose how high up you go, choose what you go through, and it helps get through anxiety. It helps you feel different about your anxiety, manage it a lot better. There is a massive social community making you feel a part of something, even when there may not be a lot of people around. Climbers are some of the nicest people you will ever meet. Finally, there's a huge confidence boost whenever you finish something while climbing, making you feel good about yourself and want to go back climbing.
All right, let's go in 3, 2, 1, go. Climbing is not only physical, it is mental as well. Moving on from our bodies, let's turn our attention towards the environment. Some positive impacts of people climbing is going out and helping others avoid very worn areas. For example, if you've ever gone out and seen a trail closed, that's because either a hiker or a climber has gone and alerted a park ranger that that area needs time to grow back. As with any sport, going outside is something that really needs to be watched. People often walk in areas that they're not supposed to walk, so some of the positive things that climbers do is they also bring attention to areas that are suffering, habitats that have been severely damaged, or trails that have been wrecked, or trash being left behind. Unfortunately, as with anything that goes outside, there are negative impacts, and yes, climbing is one of them. According to Snow from National Geographic, the latest study on the effects of climbing chalk, released October of last year, October 2020, found that climbing chalk negatively impacted both the germination and survival of 4 species of each rock-dwelling ferns and mosses in lab settings, directly correlating chalk to affecting the environment. Climbing as well increases foot traffic and climbing traffic to areas that were previously undisturbed. Areas that haven't had people there for 10, 20 years now have people coming in and disturbing nature. That makes it harder for nature to come back, regrow, and have rebirth that it needs. So, how do we help? The biggest thing I would recommend is decreasing the amount of chalk used outside. While it may hurt your hands, people can take a little bit of pain on your hands, and calluses are good for climbing, actually. So, decreasing the amount of chalk and not using a wire brush, because according to the European Outdoor Conservation Association, the EOCA, avoid damaging the rock itself. Don't chip or deface the cliff, and be mindful not to cause erosion of susceptible rocks. By, for example, climbing on sandstone in wet conditions, using a wire brush to clean soft rocks such as gritstone, or repeatedly top roping on the same routes on stones such as limestone. That's not limestone, but that's also not good for the environment. And personally, whenever I go climbing, I use this type of brush, which is a cloth brush that will not affect the stone or the surrounding environment. And lastly, the thing that we can do is leave no trace. That is a favorite phrase around conservationists and the environmental lovers and climbers. So leave no trace is essentially leaving the area how you found it. No trash, and don't go off the path. Use bathrooms whenever possible. The environment is something that climbers strive to protect, something that everyone should want. The age of extreme sports is here, and climbing is a part of it, a sport that has been alive since the early part of human life. The recreational aspect is what drives us to be able to approach a problem and say,
I am prepared. To comprehend how good climbing is for the body and how to better conserve the earth is what it means to climb. Climbing provides joys to those who love the outdoors or even the introverts who want to be alone. Rock climbing inspires people to achieve the unexpected, to push beyond their normal limits, and to